jump right in. The world today, it feels more unpredictable than ever, right? You've got geopolitical tensions, markets that are all over the place, and technology changing at lightning speed. In the middle of all this chaos, how does a rising power like India not just stay afloat, but actually get ahead? Well, it looks like they're tearing up the old rule book and writing a brand new one. And this, right here, is the central puzzle. On the one hand, if you look at India's economy, it's a genuine bright spot. We're talking strong growth, solid fundamentals. But on the other hand, the global stage it's playing on is getting more and more unstable, even dangerous. So the big question is, how do you build a strong house in a neighborhood that's prone to earthquakes? So to really get our heads around this, we're going to break it down into 6 key parts. We'll kick things off with this new global game, then look at India's defensive moves and its offensive strategy. After that, we'll dive into its disciplined approach, see what lessons can be learned from the champions, and finally, uncover what the ultimate goal of this whole thing really is.
Okay, first up, a new global game. The core idea here is actually pretty simple, but it's profound. You know, all those assumptions that drove the global economy for the last 30 years, things like open trade, stable rules, well, they're breaking down. We are in a completely new era.
Which, of course, leads to a crucial question. What exactly went wrong? Why has this system that seemed so stable for so long suddenly become so fragile and, frankly, so unpredictable? Now, this chart might look a bit complex, but it gets to the heart of the problem. Some are calling it the QE infinity trap. See, after the 2008 financial crisis, central banks pumped unbelievable amounts of money, that's the QE, or quantitative easing, into the system to keep it afloat. But that cash didn't always go into building new factories or creating jobs. Instead, it inflated massive bubbles in stocks and real estate, made inequality worse, and actually led to lower growth. And that economic stagnation, it fueled populism, which then led to protectionism, trade wars, and rising geopolitical risk. You see, it's a vicious cycle. And layered on top of all that political fragility, a massive new demand driver has just burst onto the scene: artificial intelligence. The source material puts it perfectly. The 20th century ran on oil and steel, but the 21st, it's going to run on compute, computing power, and all the critical minerals you need to make it happen. And this slide really shows you the real-world impact. The chart on the left, it projects this absolute explosion in electricity demand just from AI data centers. And the one on the right, that's the price of copper, a basic building block of industry, hitting all-time highs. The abstract world of AI is creating a very real, very intense scramble for physical resources. All right, so given this new, more dangerous world, what's the first move you make? You play defense. Let's look at India's defensive playbook, which is all about one thing: surviving in a world full of shocks. And the key concept here is something called strategic resilience. Think of it like economic shock absorbers for your country. It's all about making sure you can take a punch, whether that's a supply chain breaking, an energy crisis, or a financial shock, and keep on your feet. It's absolutely necessary, but as we're about to see, it's not enough. And this is where things get really interesting. This brings us to a crucial pivot in India's thinking. It's about moving beyond just taking the punches to actually shaping the fight. This is the offensive strategy, going from just surviving to actively shaping the global order. This table makes the difference totally clear. Strategic resilience, on the left, that's defense. Its whole goal is to make sure you can get through a crisis. But strategic indispensability, on the right, that's offense. The goal here isn't just to be independent of the world, it's to make the world dependent on you. It's about becoming so critical to global supply chains and networks that everybody else has a direct stake in your success. Okay, so how do you even begin to achieve a goal that ambitious? Well, that brings us to section 4, a disciplined approach. This is about taking an old Indian concept called Swadeshi, or self-reliance, and giving it a complete 21st century makeover. Now, the crucial thing to get here is that this is not about closing off the economy, not at all. It's a smart, targeted strategy. Tier 1 is about securing the absolute non-negotiables. Tier 2 is about building capabilities where it's actually feasible. And most importantly, Tier 3 is about avoiding protectionism for its own sake, especially where imports don't pose a systemic risk. That helps keep costs down for everyone. And let's be crystal clear about this. This is not your grandfather's protectionism, where you just shelter inefficient companies forever. This is intelligent import substitution. Any government support comes with an expiration date. It's tied to strict benchmarks, especially one big one. Can you compete and export on the world stage? The goal is to build champions that can win globally, not hide at home. Now, you can have the greatest playbook in the world, but it's pretty useless if you don't have a star quarterback to run the plays. This brings us to Section 5, Lessons from the Champions. The argument is that this entire strategy hinges on building what's called an entrepreneurial state. So, where do you learn how to do this? You look at the success stories of East Asia. The lesson from Japan? Your bureaucracy has to be judged on results, not just on whether it followed the rules. From South Korea, it's about being tough but fair, tolerate honest failure but be ruthless about cutting off support for companies that just don't perform. Singapore teaches the incredible value of speed and flexibility, and Vietnam shows the power of being absolutely relentless about cutting costs.
So all these lessons really boil down to 3 key features of a successful entrepreneurial state. First, a government that cares about outcomes, not just process. Second, a system that can take calculated risks and, crucially, learn from its failures. And third, and this is probably the hardest one, the credible, believable ability to withdraw support when things aren't working out. It's about placing smart bets and knowing when to fold.
All right, let's bring this all home to our final section and see how it all adds up. Section 6, the ultimate goal. This is the grand vision, the real prize at the end of this long, difficult road, becoming indispensable to the world. And this quote just nails it. True success, true strategic indispensability, is achieved when the world moves from thinking about buying Indian to buying Indian without thinking. It's that moment when Made in India becomes a trusted default, a synonym for quality and reliability. That's the end game. Because, at the end of the day, the highest form of economic power isn't about forcing other countries to do what you want. It's influence exercised without any coercion at all. It's when others line up with your interests simply because it's in their best interest to do so. That is the kind of power that comes from being truly indispensable. Which leaves us with one final big question. The strategy seems sound. The ambition is definitely there. The playbook is written. But the hardest part is always the execution. So the question is, does India have the institutional courage to actually run this new play? That, right now, remains to be seen.